So my background, I studied business at LMU in Munich also, and did a PhD in the year of 99 on globalization. And I've been, for most of my time, I've been developing video on demand portals in the last 20 years. There was a decentralized one built on the Napster technology back in 2006. So maybe that's my closest point to this kind of discussion. And now with mYndstorm Productions, basically we come to the other side, not crypto, but Metaverse. So we produce virtual reality. And I did have 2 projects that I was consulting 2-3 years ago that were in the smart contract side. Cinemarket and White Rabbit both still exist, where it's all about registering films and trading films and licensing films through blockchain technology. So on that side, the most important thing that I know is that I don't know enough. So,
that's always the case, right? But it's good to know it.
It's always good to know what you do not know, and I know it's a very exciting space where I basically don't have the time to indulge that deeply, because basically on the past 3 years we've been focusing on virtual reality. And what I'm going to talk today is Mind the Brain, which is our neuroreactive VR installation. Yip Tidipta, that you will all know. She knows it also very well. She's been involved from very early stages. And we basically recently won the New Reality Prize of the 1E9 conference that you've just seen. So that makes us very happy. And we showed the installation at Deutsches Museum in the VR Lab as part of the High A Festival, the High Tech Agenda Festival for Bavaria. And yeah, I think that's what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. Yeah.
Great, Kathrin, the stage is yours.
Yeah. So what I will do is, if it's all right with you, I will share my screen and give you a little bit of an insight. I hope you can see everything on Mind the Brain. So it's a VR application. We've been funded by FFI. It's an installation, and it involves, it's a journey through the brain that not only gives you basically a pass and your very own personal journey through the brain, it also basically is interactive with the brain. So what does it do in an afternoon of high technology and crypto as we've seen today? What I see that space is all about is or the interesting thing in that space is basically how you organize society, and what are the structures to organize it. And our background for Mind the Brain comes from a very personal experience, but also from the thought that the brain is actually a model for a very open society. Because the brain is capable, all the neurons inside the brain constantly connect, reconnect. There's no clear hierarchy. They're all basically connecting by themselves. It's an organization that's doesn't follow, there's no master in that risk. There's nobody that centrally controls how the brain is working. It's basically all self-organized from what we understand today. And that has been kind of a guiding principle. Also, the other part that interests us very much is we know that everything that comes around virtual reality, that where you have, I think, the very common, how do you say, to put it in an investor side name, you have Metaverse. You could talk long about Metaverse. What we really have as a development behind is that we have a web that turns out to be 3-dimensional in many aspects, how to watch it and see it. And that also changes a lot. And so what we see is once the structures start building new, basically we see the metaphor of the brain as a very, very, very powerful metaphor of how you can organize things. And when we come from the space where we come, if we see how I say the development of the classic internet has been, and I think you still hear that a lot in this space, is all the innovation goes about storytelling. If we got the invitation to this speech, one of the things that we hear is make it a hero story. And our aim with the project that we have here, which is an artistic project, is also to look a little bit behind it, because from basically founding products because they have a good storytelling behind it, we have become to an internet that has optimized problems like ad solutions. We spent billions in optimizing how to target persons through personalized ads. Maybe there would have been some really more important problems than that, but these are the ones that where the storytelling about getting funding was very easy. And for a very new development, such as a three-dimensional web, such as the Metaverse, basically, we do think that very classical design thinking, storytelling, narrative propositions often don't go far enough, because for all of these, you have to define the problems that you want to solve. And with a three-dimensional web, we actually don't know yet what kind of problems we want to solve. This is why we think an artistic approach will be very, very important. This is also why we worked with open labs. We worked with very open developments, and there is a very thriving artistic community that centers around many of the fine festivals that basically makes VR experiences. And I can only recommend to everyone to follow this community, because if we see what's possible and if we see kind of the possible futures that can be imagined with the Metaverse, with the three-dimensional web, we think that the artistic approaches that are there are very powerful, and very often they bring together very different perspectives. So what does Mind the Brain do? It's a journey that brings you basically into the one person that narrates everything, and that is yourself. So it's a collective experience. So what we do is we go into a room together. So we run it in installations, and we usually have a person enter the room, and we pick one central person who's going to be the person that goes through this experience for us. So you see this lady here that was picked in the Deutsche Museum. And so this person becomes a VR headset and a computer brain interface, and is entering on a journey through the brain. And basically what we did is we took scientific models of the brain, and you see here pictures from Deutsches Museum in the VR lab, where we projected from the VR experience the live images that this one person was seeing into an audience of, in that case, around 10-20 people. And the images of the brain is an artistic interpretation of scientific models. So you actually really go through a scientific model of the brain, you fly through. And it brings you on several stages to what we call the poetic room. You see it here. So that's the projection. You see on the left side, you see the person's brain interface. And what looks funny like this is you see that there's electrons on the head of the person. So we measure the brain activity, and the images that you see come to place an interplay between the person's brain activity and the VR. These are archetypical images. So we have a complete roster of archetypical images at the end of the experience. And basically we have a group of people that watches this, and what we see is coming into play between the electrical activity of the brain of the person. It works with focusing and defocusing, and it creates a very interesting interplay of the group that's watching this and the one person in the brain interface. And especially the end of the experience is really different every time. So it's a complete unique piece that is generated by the person. It's not basically, it's not a different movie every time, because there's a very long entrance, it's always the same. But this last part is really also a visualization of the brainwaves of that specific person.
Quick question in between. So this person, it sees something in the VR glasses, and people, and it also has sensors on the brain, and people can
Mhm.
see like his brain activity while he was watching a movie or something.
No, it's really what we do is we make the experience interactive. So as we take the images from the VR headset, it's kind of like a live movie. And in the last part, the brain activity generates different images. It's not that we can take images out of the head of the person and project it on the screen. It's images that are already there, and basically the reaction of the person, whether you react strongly, whether you can focus, brings these images to life and has certain images appear and other images don't appear. So, for example, you can see here these people. We take the images out of the VR headset, project them into the room, and it's something that was in that certain second when those people see it. It's really something that we generated because the person with the VR headset and the EEG generates these images. And so it's kind of being live into the room. One of the next steps that we can do here is basically also get the projection three-dimensional. Then you would need special shutter glasses. So all of the people would share the same space. That's kind of then they would really be in kind of a metaverse section and everyone shares the same space, but it's reactive through the brain interface of that one person. Yeah, and so we've been showing Mind the Brain at several stages already. So we develop it in Open Labs with all the different parts. So we developed the projection part, we developed the BCI interaction part, and we got development funding from the Filmfernseh for Bayern, from FFF in 2020, and developed this through the pandemic, and the premiere has been at Bitz Club, also at Deutsches Museum. So Deutsches Museum is kind of opening up very nicely. We did that in July, and now the next development was here in as part of that festival in November. So these images here are in November, and then we presented it also at 1E9 conference. Yeah.
Great, looks amazing.
Yeah, so are there any, probably there are many questions. So.
Yeah, I have some, but no questions so far in the chat. So what is this person seeing? Which movie when it has the VR glasses on?
So the film or the experience itself brings you from what we call the cathedral of the brain, which is basically a visualization. You can really imagine it like a metropolis-like cathedral, which is a visualization of the main connections inside the brain. So it's kind of a flight. And then you go through several stages. You fly through basically in lilac, you fly through the optical nerve inside the brain, and then on the next level we change the level. You come into a gigantic wood. You've been that picture was in there before, a gigantic wood of neurons, and these neurons are really blinking in reaction to the brain interface of the person. So when Elon Musk says we get your neurons blinking live, he does it a bit different, but we can also do that. We were actually faster. But the difference is when you see what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, they really set electrodes inside the head. They can solve very specific problems there. So they can, that's very good, for example, to clear a paralysis. So if there's basically neurons that would need to transmit signals, for example, so that you can move your arm, with placing electrodes inside the head, that's something you can do very precisely. What we can measure with EEG technology, which is basically 100 years old, is we measure the frequency that the electrodes or the neurons in the brain are talking to each other. And the frequency is different whether you're focusing, whether you're attentive, or whether you're sleeping, or whether you're relaxing. And we work with these differences. And these differences now basically create or enable you to create different images in the last part of the experience, which we call the poetic room.
Wow, so you make actually like a lot of researchers experiments. You must have like also, what are you doing like with all this data? You're collecting them, you're giving to third parties, or like, or maybe it's maybe also interesting for, yeah, like these kinds of experiments for many scientists, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we actually don't collect it, and that's definitely a very interesting discussion to lead, because I mean, if you have data privacy, that takes it really up to 300 more levels. There are, I mean, the larger field where you could say, which is similar, is called neurogaming. So there are games that are actually being programmed and are getting larger in interactivity with brain interfaces. And there are some platforms that actually really do collect the data and make that data publicly available. It's of course very sensitive data, because every brain signal is specific to each person. It's also specific to each time of the day. But of course, there are some things you could read out that are really private, like attention and focus and HDHD, or you also see it if you had like, for example, at the Cryptoberfest, if you had too many beers, you would see it in the signal. And so for sure, these platforms, if you say where to come with that connection of basically crossing gaming technology and VR and what we do, then there is an interesting part to see, also to measure that data and to calculate it. But you really, really have to be very attentive when it comes to data privacy and all these kinds of considerations. Yeah.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And how does your roadmap look for the next 3, 5, or 10 years? Like, what's your end game? Where would you like to be?
Yeah, so it's an artistic project, so there's no end game.
Okay. So it's for creativity, for the art itself.
Yes, but what we plan is, of course, to make to bring that, because we see that it moves people very much. So we want to bring this to much larger audiences than we have at the moment. We know it works very well. We have people buying tickets. That's good news for people that work with VR. Is there is a business model. I think there's a need for people to have other experiences than watching films. They've been watching movies in the pandemic for 1.5 years. If they go out, of course, cinema is still interesting, but they also like to have new experiences. So, of course, we will have basically a new kind of experience industry coming up. You see, if you look into the United States, you have spaces like Meow Wolf, where they built gigantic halls. And so if you say what is a model in that space, then of course bringing that also as a physical entertainment to people is very interesting. What is of course also interesting is that we do have a very unique experience. I mean, you have a whole NFT sector where we have a very unfortunate discussion about things being able to be copied, not copied. I mean, probably, or if you haven't seen the Matrix avatar discussion with Keanu Reeves, please do so. the way that he laughs at what they show him about NFTs is really very memorable. So he laughs about right-clicking NFTs because they just sold. I don't know if you've been into that discussion, but from my limited knowledge, a very good example on the marketability is that Warner sold for a game avatars for the new Matrix sequel for $50 a piece. And they instantly made a very, very good revenue for just basically, I think $50 it was, so you could buy your avatar, your personalized Matrix avatar in the new Avatar game as an NFT. So I mean, and there, that's a collector's model that absolutely makes sense because people have been collecting figurines, and so why should they collect NFTs? But also the way that Keanu Reeves, who is the avatar, loves about this also because you can right-click them is also very interesting. I think it shows to me the whole discussion that we have, and especially the PR problem that we have in that space that still needs to be solved. And so where do you say, where do we see ourselves? I mean, we want to be really one of the, at least from Bavaria and from Germany, one of the leading producers of these kind of interactive and also basically forward-looking VR experiences. There is a very interesting industry, as I said before, of artistic people that basically want to find out what can you do in this space and how do you also tell stories in this space, because that becomes something very different. And what we think is very excited about the space is also, and that's basically the same thing that is true for the whole blockchain NFT space. It's all about creating new rules. We had the Buckminster Fuller quote before, that it's all about creating a new game. So that's been following me from that space. And I think that's the very compelling reason. In our case, it's because we come from the film industry. It's a lot about creating new rules on what narration can be, what storytelling turns into in the future. And I think we're all about to find those rules and to redefine those rules. And as long as we are very sensitive that with these rules, we're also always shaping society. And I think that it's a very exciting time to be in this space. Yeah.
Definitely. The whole idea of VR now with Metaverse and gaming, like coming together in the next year. I see, like, I'm not sure, have you seen the movie Ready Player #1?
Yeah, of course.
I always have to think of this, but I think we're not so far away from, for example, this science fiction future. I mean, the gap is closing faster and faster, and also due to this interesting projects. Like,
yeah, the interesting part is, I mean, these are really dystopian. I mean, Ready Player One is absolutely dystopian. I mean, it's a world where everybody wants to escape the real world and and get into this other world. And basically, the thoughts have been adapted, but very often without seeing the dystopia that it also contains. So, but being well aware of that is very nice. And so that, but to discuss this and to discuss the futures that we're creating is of course very interesting as well. And so if you're into Ready Player One and the visions of the future, we had discussions about solar punk. I don't know if you know the area. Solar punk, yeah. Solar punk is science fiction that creates a very positive image of the future that has a lot to do with it's also an aesthetic. So they create futuristic worlds where basically the cities are full of green, where people can walk in the city again. And so also kind of
breathe fresh air.
Yeah, breathe fresh air, have crypto without the energy problems. So solar punk is, if we talk about visions of the future, is definitely an interesting path also to look at.
It's
maybe
super,
a guiding light for how can we go and where will we go. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's super interesting, this whole industry. I actually never tried VR glasses by myself, but as far as I see it, like from YouTube videos or whatever, I think this is like such a huge step, like especially like together with this lockdown COVID situation. If you see, like, people are more and more locked them, are used to logging themselves up in their house, and I mean, like this Metaverse VR technology, it's just coming right on time for adoption the next year. So I think
mean,
the project
the typical scarcity problems, because you would have thought there would be a very, very big growth way in the first lockdown because people were at home, but they couldn't ship the glasses. So I think the stage where we were with smartphones when we really had BlackBerry still. So my husband Oliver, who's also of Mind the Brain and who's basically run a company with me. that's his saying is that we're kind of in the BlackBerry phase of the market, and what really needs to come in the next stage is what now would be the smartphone. And if you look at the one future, I'm very doubtful that it will look like that we all spend hours and hours locked away in glasses, but I think we will have a very seamless merging. So if you look at the quote unquote metaverse that we have now at the social VR platforms, like VR chat, they are most interesting when you can access them with glasses, without glasses, with your smartphone, and that's been true for all the platforms. The more device agnostic you are, the better it is. And the whole metaverse development is definitely something that goes beyond having goggles or not goggles. It's basically about making creating a three-dimensional world, which if we would be in a three-dimensional space here in this talk also, for example, it would just not probably be the two of us talking, but we could open the space now and we would have a much more natural way of how we could form conversations. Yeah.
Yes, definitely meeting in a virtual room, like sitting face, like more 3D. That's the future in many ways. I think I've also seen some kind of, if I'm not mistaken, Zoom is also trying to go in the metaverse. Like that's what we are using right now, this conference tool. I think this could be like also super interesting, like not only for companies, but also for the wider public. Next time,
yeah,
who knows? I mean, maybe in the next session we're gonna have our own VR glasses and.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of very good solutions for conferences, and the difference is in this part of the conversation where it's basically just one person talking to an audience. That's actually a bit more convenient to have a Zoom kind of conversation. But if you have breakout sessions, if you can move in a three-dimensional way, it's of course much more natural to the way that you would move in a conference. And what we do with our project, also our next project, which is called I Want to Be Your Dog, is if you have a three-dimensional platform like say VRChat is one of the broadest, you have avatars, you can move three-dimensionally, but there's still lost things that do get lost if we have a real conversation, because probably if we talk to each other in the normal world, I would say, we have things like smell, we perceive each other's bodies, and what is it that makes these kind of interactions? What is it that shapes our interaction? That is also a lot what we do with the neuroreactive VR that we do. So for I Want to Be Your Dog, you can see the world from the perspective of a dog. And that's also a much more bodily perception, and that was what we try to make to make people basically feel and understand. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting to like get the vision from a dog, like,
yes.
but also like the fact to make like virtual reality more real, to have like this to also use the other senses, like to try to stimulate them, like with smell or something. This would be like in future, like if you could, I don't know, somehow get the smell of the other person while you're talking with her, then I think there's, yeah, next time you don't have to meet at all anymore.
Yeah, it's a lot of what happens in the community is basically thinking about what brings you more into a situation. And there's been a lot of experiences with smell. So people waving you're in the jungle, they're waving forest smells at you. That makes it not so convenient. And but it works. It also works if you have haptic feedback. So for example, if you have a fire extinguisher solution, if you have a real fire extinguisher in your hand, you're way different in the situation. And so yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to discover when you look at that.
Yes, it's still a really interesting project, you could say, or like field for the next years. And yeah, I'm excited how it will develop in many ways.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I think we are reached the time. I don't see any more questions here in the chat. If you ask me, I think we can wrap it off. Thank you very much, Kathrin, for this wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And I'm very happy talking. I think the next speaker is Fredmund Malik. And when I was studying globalization, I heard a lot about his theory, and it's all about self-organization as well. And so that's kind of a pitch. There's a good flow from this topic to the next, because it's all about open systems and organization.
Perfect. Yeah, I've just seen Fredmund Malik. He's in the other room. This room is now we're done with this room now. So we can close the session here and go to the other room. Kathrin, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having you here. Hope to see you on our next conference in April. And yeah, I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Namaste. Ciao.